Released on September 19, 2000, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 in true sequel fashion improves on everything the first game did. The gameplay has more variety and the skating feels more fine-tuned, there's more levels with even better layouts, and completely new tracks that consist of more genres than just punk. Many fans of this series claim Pro Skater 2 as their favorite, and it's easy to see why. Without further ado, let's give Pro Skater 2 a deeper look. Pro Skater 2 added a bunch of new stuff for players to enjoy while they're skating about. For one, there's manuals this time. One of the most basic but useful moves was finally added. It's weird to think that the first game didn't have them considering how iconic they are to the game. Anyways, manuals allow for the player to continue their combo whenever they land on the ground, so players can create really big combos and use the landscape to its full potential. Manuals weren't the only new move added. Lip tricks were also introduced in this entry. Lip tricks are where players are onto the ledge of something and hang there until they lose their balance. Definitely not as useful as the manual, but considering how it's in every game past this point, I had to bring it up. Neversoft added more grind, grab, and flip tricks too, so players can have more freedom in choosing a skating style. More objectives. This time, players will have to complete 10 goals in order to 100% a level, including hitting 3 different high scores, more collection-based challenges, requiring the player to find or use certain gaps, finding the secret tape, and collecting all the money on one map. This significantly increases the playtime of this game, as players are going to have to find out where all the collectibles and gaps are, and find ways to get those hard to attain dollar bills, while having to deal with the other classic challenges. The players are also told which goals they completed after a run, which is quite nice, as players will have to go back to the objective screen every time they missed something in the last game. A money-based system. Pro Skater 2 has players buying all their items and stats this time, and they can earn cash by completing the career goals, of course. They're still unlockables, but the player has more freedom as to what they would like to get first, as opposed to the more linear system of its predecessor. Harder goals give more money, naturally, and players will have to get enough cash in order to advance to the next level. Create a skater. Players can now create their own skater in their own likeness, and while the options are rather limited, it's nice to give the player some creativity on how they want their character to look and act. It also makes it so that they have another skater they have to beat tour mode with. Create a park. Players can also create their own park to skate around and customize to an extent. There's plenty of set pieces to choose from, and the player has a total of 4 themes to select. They can even create gaps. Once players are done making their map, they can test it out in order to find what tweaks they should make, so it feels just right. Customizable special tricks. Specials in this game aren't tied to just one skater, with the exception of special characters. Players can purchase special tricks for any skater, and they can also assign what button combination they want the move to have. Now, players don't have to look at the game's manual or on the internet in order to pull out special tricks. It's all in one place. And one more thing, there's a gap checklist in this game that shows which gaps the player still has left to cross, and it even shows what the different kinds of gaps there are on one level, and how much it's worth. This game has a few lockables for getting all the gaps, so having a checklist for what still needs to be done is nice, so the player doesn't have to guess which gaps they do and don't have to do. Overall, these new gameplay changes and additions really make Pro Skater 2 such an enjoyable experience. The amount of goals keep the player interested with their variety, and how they challenge skaters to explore and use the map. There's a lot of unlockables, and the new skating physics make it easier to pull off some sick combos. There's also 2 multiplayer modes added: Tag, where one player has to tag the other, and they can slow down their target by doing tricks, and 2-player free skate mode was added, so players can just screw around in a level without having to be competitive. They're small but nice additions that show Neversoft wanted to give players the most playtime possible. The visuals for Pro Skater 2 are pretty close to its predecessor, but there are some things here and there that add some sparks to the art style and levels. The levels are slightly larger and more complex this time. They feel more open and there's plenty of verticality in the levels. Players can usually find a way to get on top of just about everything, and these areas usually have set pieces on them too. After all, why make it possible for players to get to higher ground if there's nothing to do up there? Anyways, there's more variety this time too. Instead of just mostly US urban environments, players get to go to multiple countries and will use more than just the streets to complete challenges and earn competition medals. There's also no end goal levels this time. Every map is open and doesn't have a place where the player will be stopped in their tracks if they enter it, really demonstrating their uniqueness and how much freedom they give to the player. The levels in this game also have more hidden areas the player can get to if they mess around with the environment. In general, the levels just feel more interactive with a lot more set pieces, gaps, and things to run into. Well, onto the skaters. There's a larger selection of skaters this time around, with more professionals from different parts of the world entering the ring. The character models look just about the same from the last game, but most skaters have a second outfit this time, and some even have 3 or more outfits. Speaking of the skaters, their animations are better this time. Still kinda clunky, but they do look more refined this time, and there's also a lot more tricks, so players have the option of not seeing the same moves over and over again. Alright, let's talk about the menus next. The menus are fairly similar to the first game, but there are some big changes to make it its own thing. First of all, the character select screen has a bit more information about the skater selected, and how much money the player currently has. The level select screen also has a picture of the selected skater, and this time, there's a small FMV that shows a 3D rendering of the map. The flat map of the US was turned into a globe that rotates depending on what part of the world the previewed level takes place in. The loading screens have a bit more personality too, with the goal screen displaying what needs to be done, written down on paper, pinned to a wall, surrounded by other skating imagery, and women in bikinis. The free skate screen and main menus have some radical artwork too, with a lot more background images. And that's all I have to say about the visuals for Pro Skater 2. As if Pro Skater 1 didn't have a good enough soundtrack, Pro Skater 2 really amps things up with its new songs. This sequel has 5 more songs, and they span from punk to new metal to hip hop/rap, so it's nice to have more variety that fits in with the edgy nature of skating and the action-packed gameplay. Guerrilla Radio, Cyclone, Heavy Metal Winter, When Worlds Collide. I mean, it's mind-blowing how good Neversoft was at curating a soundtrack of many different artists that all had their own sound, but still fit in so perfectly with their games. Tony Hawk Day is May 16th because of the Lagwagon song included in this game too. Anyways, just like the first game, there's also a hip-hop-esque main menu track that may not be as good as its predecessor, but it's still groovy and fits well enough with the menus. And one more thing about the music. I forgot to mention this in the last Tony Hawk review, but the songs from the soundtrack played during the FMVs, and just like the gameplay, these songs are quite appropriate when it comes to the radical nature of skating. Anyways, Pro Skater 2 seems to have a bit more ambience than its predecessor. I tried to listen to the ambience of Pro Skater 1, but there didn't seem to be a lot of it. Pro Skater 2 has sounds that pertain to the levels, like how Venice Beach has waves rushing on the shore and seagulls. Of course, these aren't really noticeable because most players leave the tunes on, but it's still cool to have regardless. It has some depth to the levels, even if it's at a small level. Anyways, that's about all I had to say about the sound department of Pro Skater 2. Pro Skater 2 has a couple of extras for the player to mess around with. First of all, the secret character is starting with Spider-Man. Neversoft released a Spider-Man game that same year, so as a way to cross-promote it, they put the famous wall crawler in the game. And just like all the other characters, he has multiple outfits, which were pulled from the Spider-Man 2000 game, and his own special moves based off his superpowers. The skateboards are comic book covers from his iconic series. He even has his own skater FMV, where Chad Muska and Tony Hawk put on the Webhead's costume and do some cool tricks. Past Spidey, Officer Dick and Private Carrera return, and they're pretty much the same from the first game, so not much to say here. Private Carrera doesn't replace Officer Dick this time. She has her own spot in the character select screen, and she's unlocked by finding every gap. The last game had players having to input cheats on the pause screen while playing a level, but the player can now activate cheats from the main menu and use them without having to input a code every time they want to use cheats. There's also more cheats this time, so players can really have a blast with them by turning multiple on at one time. Alright, one more thing. Players get access to the Skater Heaven level by 100%ing every skater's career. This level is a skate park trapped in space, and contains many different set pieces for the player to use, so they can get the highest scores possible. Quite fun to mess around with. Okay, onto the version differences. They're pretty close to what they were last time. The PS1 has all the FMVs and mostly uncensored soundtrack, and the N64 has the faster loading screens, but no skating videos, and the Butcher to Hell songs, along with other kinds of censorship to make it more kid-friendly, are back. The Dreamcast and PC ports look better than the aforementioned versions with visual improvements and small changes to the menus, and the PC port even had a few Pro Skater 1 levels within its data. Then there's the Xbox version known as Pro Skater 2X. It looks even better than the Dreamcast and PC ports, has Pro Skater 1's levels along with their goals, and even has 5 levels with their own goals too, although these maps aren't that great. Up to 4 players can hop in on the fun in multiplayer mode, and the maps weren't reduced in size like they were in the other ports. The menus were completely redone, and there's this weird ghosting effect around the skater. There's also other small additions like the ability to make female custom skaters, and a rail balance meter was added, so it's more than just the levels and graphics. Even Spider-Man is here, and just like all the other characters, his models were completely remade to really use the power of the Xbox. While still on characters for the Xbox, Private Carrera was replaced with Trixie in this version, and the Dreamcast port, for unknown reasons, and while she has the same special tricks as Private Carrera, she was given her own decks. Players were also able to add custom songs to the soundtrack thanks to the Xbox's ability to rip songs from CDs and add them to its hard drive. Okay, one more thing. Certain PC Asian versions of the game had 4 playable characters not found in any other region. These skaters being the South Korean singers from Fin KL, and 7 of their songs were included on the disc too. Apparently the company that made the Korean release thought these singers were so popular that players in those markets would buy the game because of the stars. Alright, that's enough of the version differences, let's move on to the issues. The big drop feature is really dumb, and it's easy to see why it never appeared in any other Tony Hawk game. Seriously, it's such a huge buzzkill to have such a good combo going, only for the game to decide it's completely worthless once the player has taken a fall. As I mentioned before, the controls are better, and there's more verticality to the levels, so why punish players for enjoying the new skating physics and using the maps? Secondly, getting some of the cache icons are overly frustrating, like this one in Philadelphia. I just wish I could get up here by just wall riding, but I had to use the ledge, and it seems random as to how much air I get whenever I ollie off of it. Last issue, and this one isn't that big, but it's hard to judge the balance of the lit tricks. Now, most players don't use the lit tricks because they aren't that great in the general scheme of things, but regardless, understanding when the player is about to fail when doing a lit trick is hard to judge, and definitely not as clear as understanding the balance of grind tricks. Otherwise, I don't have any other issues with Pro Skater 2. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 took the great things about its predecessor and made them even better by modifying the skate physics so the gameplay feels smoother and adding more unlockables to maximize the amount of playtime players can get. That's kind of everything the sequel has to offer. A revamped tour mode with plenty of new goals that utilize the polished skating system, 10 new maps that give the player a lot of freedom to skate about, and bust out some sick combos no matter what part of the level they're in, a soundtrack with more variety and tracks that still fit in with the edgy and cool vibe of skating, a lot of unlockables that'll keep the player completing the tour mode with all the characters, cheats for some silly fun that can be unlocked and activated via the main menu, the ability for players to create their own skater, even if it is quite limiting, and a couple of things from the previous game that give the player even more to do. Like its predecessor, Pro Skater 2 still has a couple of missing features that were prominent in future games, but it's easier to look past them because it's quite fun, and it still has a lot for the player to earn through the story mode. There's just something about going through the tour mode again and again that's so fun, even if it is the same thing every time. And until next time, use those new moves and get those 6 scores.